Rise of Skywalker is the fall of Star Wars. The Rise of Skywalker stars Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver, John Boyega, with brief cameo appearances by Harrison Ford, the late Carrie Fisher, and of course, everyone's favorite Jedi, Luke Skywalker, aka Mark Hamill. The film is a mess, there's no other way to put it. It is more closely akin to a video game, more so than an actual film. In fact, it actually appears to be an amalgamation of two different films kind of squeezed into one, because it does do a lot of retcons from The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi was the second and penultimate episode in this trilogy, and it really just kind of shit on the entire mythos of Star Wars that was built beforehand, and really left J.J. Abrams with, honestly, jack shit to be able to do in terms of completing this trilogy in a coherent fashion that provided answers for everyone involved. The film, it's a video game. There's no other way to put it. It's one where you start off and you have one little MacGuffin. You go get that MacGuffin, and then once you get it, you find out, well, you need to go get another MacGuffin to find out where you need to go from there. And once you get there, then you got to find out, well, you need to go do this to be able to deactivate this and be able to get into that. And then finally, you might be able to make it to the final boss who is there, and then you realize that the final boss is actually using you to come to him and to begin with, and it is just a steaming pile of dog shit. And this is coming from someone who likes the prequels for what they are. They are, let's be honest, they are poorly written films, but they do increase and expand the mythos and the world of Star Wars. It is one that shows like the decadence of a republic and how once it's built up, you have people inside it that infiltrate it and then lead to the downfall of said republic. I can see what George Lucas was going for and understand it. And, you know, you may have your disagreements, the really bad writing, the I hate sand, it's so coarse and it gets everywhere. And of course the Jar Jar Binks is basically a blaxploitation parody of an African American man. And they're not great films, but they're good Star Wars films in terms of they increase what you want to see. You get to see Jedis who are at the height of their power in terms of their abilities with lightsabers and force usage, along with a republic that was set up. But the Rise of Skywalker is one where there's not really a coherent story that's there. It's very phonetic, very crazy. Everything seems to just be happening. From the opening crawl where you see it says the dead speak, and basically that just is a reference to the fact that the Emperor is still alive. The Emperor who fell down a reactor shaft in the middle of space and then should have been disintegrated when the second Death Star exploded above the forest moon of Endor, and then fell to another moon or another planet around Endor, yet didn't completely destroy it. This film, you can tell there was a lot of issues in terms of getting a coherent story from the writing and also with what was left from The Last Jedi. A lot of the threads that J.J. Abrams originally set up in The Force Awakens were obviously abandoned in The Last Jedi. And then in this one, they had to come back in and kind of rewrite those things and put a different spin or twist on them. For example, The Force Awakens had basically set it up to show that Rey is probably a hidden Skywalker or a Solo, and a lot of that is when the fact that she gets onto the Millennium Falcon, she can fly it. Han looks at her in a loving, appreciative way, kind of like, oh my goodness, this is my kid. You know, he's happy to see her, he smiles. And then a lot of issues with The Force Awakens, people didn't like the fact that after Han is dead, Leia runs up and hugs Rey instead of Chewie. And to me, that read as Leia hugging her daughter after the death of, you know, her husband and her daughter's father. And it didn't really pan out because The Last Jedi, they tell you that Rey's parentage is nothing, and J.J. Abrams is left with just a hot mess on how he can go from there and then make something that is coherent and actually continues to push along the mythos of Star Wars, along with just a good story that gets people interested in it, and it didn't really have it. And he does make a couple points where Rey throws away her lightsaber, and then a Force ghost, Luke, reaches out, grabs it, and says, a Jedi's weapon deserves more respect than this. And then also the ridiculous holdo maneuver of sending a spaceship at light speed into a crowd of other spaceships, and it destroys all of them, when that completely went against the pre-established physics of the universe in terms of, hyperspace. You just go through things because you're moving at the speed of light, and you're not actually in the material world, so to speak, to where you can cause damage to certain things. And this film it's just shit. I mean, there's no other way to put it. They clearly did not have an understanding of what they were wanting to do going into making episode 7, The Force Awakens, because none of the threads they have here carry all the way through the series. Everything was shit on in The Last Jedi, and then once you get to The Rise of Skywalker, it is just an amalgamation of different ideas and story points to kind of lead to something that can be considered a conclusion to the saga without actually finishing anything. Like I said, the film opens with a hunt for a MacGuffin. There's a thing called the Wayfinder. They have to go find it because this Wayfinder will direct them to Exegol, where the Emperor's actually hidden. And you have Kylo Ren, Adam Driver's character, opening the film, killing a bunch of people, finding a Wayfinder, then going to Exegol, where he meets the Emperor, who there's no explanation really as to why he's there. There's a couple of little Snoke clones floating around in a vat of something, and then he makes a comment, "The dark side is a pathway to abilities many consider to be unnatural." And it's just like, okay, yeah, that was the line you used in episode 3 when telling Anakin about the legend of Darth Plagueis the Wise, who was Darth Sidious, Sheev Palpatine's master, who the two of them tried to manipulate the Force to maintain life, and inadvertently created Anakin Skywalker as the chosen one, because the Force is always seeking balance, and it created somebody who is purely of the Force, basically a Masonic character with a virgin birth, who has the ability to go above and beyond anything before, because he's not fully human. He is a Christ-like figure who, obviously Darth Vader falls, but gets a redemption in episode 6, Return of the Jedi, when Luke throws away his saber. It says, "Like my father before me, I am a Jedi." The Emperor shoots him with his lightning. Then Darth Vader grabs the Emperor and throws him down a reactor shaft, which then blows up, and then the Death Star blows up. And all of that was shit on. All of that just is wiped clean and doesn't even matter in this instance, because the character of Rey is the new chosen one, the new savior of the galaxy, who, in this film, you find out when Kylo Ren goes to meet Palpatine, he talks about the girl, and, she's more important than you believe. And what that is it's found out that she's actually a Palpatine. She's his granddaughter, even though in the previous 3 films, in the prequel trilogy and in the original trilogy, there's no mention of Palpatine getting busy with anybody, creating any children or anything like that. And, I honestly wish they would have stuck with The Last Jedi's plot points that Rian Johnson put out there, because if they did, there would at least be some coherence in terms of the flow of the series from episode 8 to 9, but they didn't. They just wiped it clean and said, okay, well, we can't make her a Skywalker, so let's make her a Palpatine, say he's the Emperor, and that gives us a bit of a reason to bring in the Emperor. There's also a moment where they talk about how Rey and Kylo Ren are a dyad in the Force, and that dyad makes both of them stronger than what they were as individual parts, but Kylo is a grandson of Darth Vader, descended from Leia, who, in theory, would have the same potential as Anakin, just like Luke did. So, the film goes off, they go to find a Wayfinder, and then Rey, Poe, and Finn, Oscar Isaac, John Boyega's character, they then go to like a little party planet where everybody's just out getting jiggy with it, dancing to some EDM music and stuff, and they run into the magnificent Billy D. Williams, who rolls up in a cape and is like, "Hello, honey, how you doing? My name is Lando Calrissian, I'm here to help you." And that's in my opinion, one of the highlights of the film, is you finally get to see Lando back in action, one of the original characters from the original trilogies, who people liked and enjoyed his arc that he had in the original one. He was Han's frenemy a little bit, but there was still mutual respect for him. So they get to the point where they're on this party planet, and they find out that in the past Luke and Lando went here, but Luke failed once again and was unable to find what he was looking for, and then he left and goes off and becomes a hermit. And of course, Rey, or of course Rey, Finn, and Poe are a little bit better than Luke Skywalker, so they're able to find what they're looking for. After a chase where the awful scene of they fly now, they fly now, they fly now happens, and you're just like, please stop this shit. But so they fall through some quicksand into some tunnels, and then Rey, of course, uses her life force to heal a worm. A little bit of force healing, okay, I can kind of see maybe you want to throw in some new power, but it really doesn't make any sense. I mean, she didn't really have any training up to this point, other than some really bad cutscenes with old footage of Carrie Fisher, which was not good footage. I mean, you could clearly tell it's just outtakes where nothing really happens or nothing really makes sense. And a lot of times she's off camera with someone obviously as a stand-in, and she's saying lines, and then people are in essence completing her lines based upon what lacked in the footage that they have. She may say, we need to go somewhere, and then the next person says, all right, well, let's go here, what do you think? And then she says, yes. And then they progress on, and it's just it doesn't work. Honestly, they could have found a better way to honor Carrie Fisher instead of just having her kind of pop up into a couple random scenes, and you can tell it's just not good. It's a well-intentioned but poorly executed inclusion of her in the film, and it just doesn't work on any level. So after finding this Sith dagger that somehow mysteriously has the correct cutout shape of the Death Star on it, they find out that C-3PO can read it, but he cannot actually speak the words in the Sith language because of his programming. C-3PO actually plays a larger part in this film than he had in pretty much any of the other films in terms of the various quips, comments he makes, and he's kind of endearing in terms of what goes on. The other characters kind of fall flat. Poe is just kind of a scallywag. Finn is kind of relegated to a couple of oh my god moments. But C-3PO provides a little bit of lightness and humor to it. But again, it's kind of pointless at this point because nothing's really led up to it. And it's just like, oh, okay, this doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, they end up going to another planet where you have this kind of cute little puppet character, Babu Frick, who is a droid smith, who then cracks open C-3PO's head, digs around in his brains, ends up unlocking those hidden memory blocks, which allows him to translate the Sith dagger. And little Babu's kind of cute, and he's like, woohoo! After C-3PO passes out, he's like, it worked. I got him to say what he needed to. And then from there, you meet Poe's ex-fling, Zori Bliss, Kerry Russell's character, who doesn't really have much to do in the film. She seems to be more or less kind of an afterthought or kind of an added love interest character for Oscar Isaac in the film when there was nothing really there. It just didn't jive. Seems to be a lot of her scenes were probably left on the cutting floor. In fact, she never even takes off her helmet. She just opens her little visor where all you can see is her eyes. And then, Poe occasionally makes a, hey, baby, you and me? And then she's like, nah. So it doesn't go anywhere. There's no resolution to the buildup of, oh, this may have been his ex-girlfriend. They may have had some issues. Whatever reasons he left and came back, now it's just not there. It doesn't make any sense. So after getting C-3PO's memory revived, they find out they got to go to another planet surrounding Endor, large pieces of the Death Star, to find Emperor Palpatine's throne room where a Wayfinder's there. Magically enough, they land on the exact spot they need to on the island for Rey to be able to line up this just ghastly looking prop dagger thing that shows you where the Wayfinder is going to be at in the old Death Star wreckage. So she then gets on a little skiff while everybody's like, Rey, we need to wait. She hops on a skiff, goes and battles some 100-foot waves before she's able to finally get there. At this point, Kylo Ren's been doing some Force Skyping with her a couple times. They've even had a little Force Skyping lightsaber battle because while they're on the party island, Chewbacca, after the sandworm deal, Chewbacca gets captured by the Knights of Ren, who really play no role in this film at all, other than just some pieces. You never see a lightsaber from them, only a couple really cheesy weapons. One of them actually looks like Cloud's weapon from Final Fantasy, kind of the weird, jagged, large sword that doesn't make any sense. And so Chewbacca gets captured, gets in a ship, about to fly off. Rey tries to use the Force to pull it down. Kylo Ren's also there. He tries to use the Force to send it off to the sky. And then Rey shoots some lightning at them. And it's like, okay, she lost her control. She shot some lightning. What are you trying to tell me? But it didn't really make any sense. So fast forward a little bit, they find out that Chewbacca's still alive. He's got the dagger. He's on the Kylo Ren Star Destroyer. So Rey, Finn, and Poe, they take a ship. They fly up and get to the Star Destroyer. And once they're there, they end up navigating their way through the destroyer and rescue Chewbacca. Then Rey goes to Kylo Ren's quarters and is able to find the dagger, and then has a Force Skype call and a Force Skype lightsaber battle with Kylo Ren, where they knock over a statue or a pedestal where Darth Vader's twisted metal helmet's at, which that twisted metal helmet then somehow is transported through the Force to the area where Kylo Ren is. He knows they're there, and then they shoot off. Then he arrives quickly on the Death Star, or he then arrives quickly on the Star Destroyer, and there's that moment mirroring Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, where Darth Vader's like, "I am your father," reaches out his hand to Luke, and Luke's like, "Impossible!" And then he jumps out into the distance of Cloud City and kind of falls and is rescued by the Falcon. This very much mirrors that, and that Rey's there, and Kylo Ren extends his hand. "Take my hand. We can do it." But she doesn't. The Falcon shows up, so she jumps off into the Falcon, is rescued, and they take off towards the Endor Mountain. Once they're there, she makes her way into the old Death Star, and then once there, she makes her way into the old Death Star by her lonesome, while the other guys are sitting there hanging out with someone they're trying to show it as being Lando's daughter. It clearly is Lando's daughter. That's a connection there. But there's obviously a scene or two missing that kind of explains that connection. But she's also a child who was taken. She's also someone who was taken as a child and put into the Stormtrooper program, kind of similar to what Finn was. Once Rey's in the Death Star, she finds the Wayfinder. She touches it, and she has a vision of Darth Rey with that ridiculous-looking little switchblade lightsaber that flicks out. And they kind of have a mini combat with herself, like, and then the switchblade comes up and locks her lightsaber, and then they kind of jump out of that little premonition, so to speak. And then that's when Kylo Ren shows up, and they have a little duel on the old Death Star, waves and stuff crashing. And one of the big things about these lightsaber fights is they're not good. They're nothing like the prequel fights, not even in terms of good like the original trilogy, because you have to take what was there. Obi-Wan is older. Vader's not really trying. He's just barely fighting him a little bit. Obi-Wan becomes one with the Force, and then when Luke and Vader are fighting each other, Luke is a new Jedi. He's not quite mastered the lightsaber, and he's fighting Vader, and Vader's just like just knocking it away with one hand. And then in Return of the Jedi, Luke has obviously progressed as a Jedi, so his saber skills are a lot better. And then Darth Vader actually has to take two hands when fighting him, but Luke eventually defeats Vader because Vader was holding back slightly. Obviously his son doesn't want to kill him. And then Luke throws away the lightsaber because he is a Jedi. He's not going to give in to his dark temptations to kill the Emperor. Well, the fight between Kylo Ren, and what bothers me is they switch to like a knife fighting technique where they turn the lightsaber upside down and go like this. But it's a lightsaber. It's not a knife. It's more or less based off of a rapier, which is, like a fencing sword. So it's more about agility and skill, more so than a knife getting in close and carving somebody up. And both Kylo Ren and Rey flip the lightsaber over and use it in this manner, and it's just not a good fight. The choreography is really poor, along with a lot of the cuts and stuff. You can tell were done in rapid succession, things like that, to avoid having that clear, establishing shot of both characters fighting each other, like a good samurai movie back in the day by Kurosawa has. Kind of this, the static shot where you can see the movements and everything. It doesn't have that. It's very choppy, a lot of quick pace, quick, fast editing with a little bit of lens flare from J.J. Abrams thrown in as well. Well, at this point, you get another kind of cut scene where somebody says that Princess Leia has to do this, and it's going to take her last amount of power. Again, they didn't have enough scenes with Carrie Fisher, so they have to improvise it. I can understand that, but it was really done in a poor way. And then Kylo Ren all of a sudden hears his mother call out to him. She stops, and at this moment, it's pivotal because Rey gives into her anger, but they don't show it as giving into her anger. She gives into her anger and stabs Kylo Ren, who is defenseless at this point. He lowers his lightsaber and looks off into the distance because he hears his mother. And the cold, calculating Rey reaches up and stabs him. But they didn't play it up as her giving into her dark side or the darkness. They just played it up as she took her moment and she struck. And it didn't make sense. This is something someone evil would do when someone else is obviously attention is turned else when someone else's attention is obviously turned elsewhere, as Kylo's was. Because multiple times in this fight, you can tell Kylo is just kind of toying with her. But this is his fourth lightsaber battle, I think, that he's lost to Rey. And it doesn't really give any weight to either character, because Kylo's a little bitch who can't win in a lightsaber battle, and Rey is a Mary Sue who has these awesome powers, has never lost in terms of anything, with very little bit of training, and doesn't need nobody to show her or help her or anything. And it's flat. The characters, they have nowhere to go. There's no arc to them. There's nothing that makes them endearing to you, or nothing that even helps you say, oh, okay, I can relate to these characters, because you can't. There's nothing there. These characters are perfect, or at least Rey is a perfect character, and Kylo Ren is just kind of an emo child pounding around beating his fist. So after Rey stabs Kylo, she then feels a need to reach out her hand and do a force heal on him, transferring some of her life force and healing Kylo Ren. And that's a little bit of foreshadowing. Obviously, maybe Kylo is now going to do that to somebody else in the future, possibly. I don't know. But what could or could not have been part of Leia's final act, which I think that they were trying to portray it as being what she did in her final act, was that she projected the image of Han Solo into Kylo Ren or Ben Solo's mind. So Harrison Ford pops up, tells him, "Don't worry, kid. It's going to be fine. I don't hold it against you. Killed me. You're still saved." Kylo then throws his lightsaber away as Rey steals his TIE fighter, flies off to the place where Luke Skywalker was. She then burns up the TIE fighter, and that is when you see her throw the lightsaber, Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber, into the fire. Luke reaches out, grabs it. A Jedi's weapon deserves more respect than this. And you got a little moment where Force Ghost Luke Skywalker sits down, talks with Rey, tells her the Jedi live in you now. Go on, you need to defeat the Emperor. And he confirms to her that her grandfather was Palpatine. He knew that. Leia knew that. They didn't hold it against her. They wanted her to be strong and know that what your blood is or who your family are do not define you in this world. It's the choices and actions you make. And this may have been okay if it was set up in The Last Jedi, but it wasn't. None of this was there. They even says your parents are nobody. And then Kylo says, of course your parents are nobody, but your grandfather was somebody. Well, that's just horse shit. So then Force Ghost Luke reaches out, lifts his X-Wing up out of the ocean. Rey hops in that bad boy. It seems to all still work. So it doesn't really make sense for why Luke Skywalker would have force projected himself instead of using his X-Wing to fly and actually face Kylo Ren in person in The Last Jedi. So there's not really any continuity between the two films in terms of what's there. But either way, Rey flies off in the X-Wing, and we got a cutscene back to Poe and Finn, and they see Red 5 is approaching. Like, that's not Red 5. It's Rey. Ah! She's alive. She's going to Exegol. She's leading us here. She's giving us directions. So Rey flies off to confront the Emperor while Finn and Poe bring whatever rebellion or rebel ships they have left to attack Exegol and attack the basically limitless amount of Star Destroyers that have Death Star tech on it in this area. And that's one of the scenes where Kylo meets the Emperor and he's like, I'll give you the final order. And he raises his hands. Like several hundred Star Destroyers come up out of the ice. It's clearly a one-upper kind of deal. That's all of these movies have all been kind of one-uppers. Episode 7 had the Star Killer base. That was basically a Death Star on steroids. So why not have this one where you've got a bunch of Star Destroyers that are really just very small Death Stars? It doesn't even make any sense. So once they arrive on Exegol, the plan for Finn and Poe and them is to take out this one communication tower. By taking out that, none of these Star Destroyers will be able to use the Exegol system because there's a lot of interference and things like that can allow the ships to actually leave, and you actually need a map to get in through the system. So for some reason, they decide to stage an attack using some horses that popped up on the indoor with the character Lando's daughter. And they land and do like a ground assault on a Star Destroyer in lower atmosphere, where all these little horses and a bunch of people on foot take off and try to take out the communication deck of this, or the communication antenna on the Star Destroyer, along with doing some fighting on it. And it honestly reads like a child wrote it. It's really bad fan fiction in this sense, and it doesn't really make sense. You're watching it and you're just like... and you want to laugh at it because it is so bad. I mean, this is a Star Wars movie that Disney paid $4.5 billion to get the rights from George Lucas. Why would they basically devolve the series into kind of a hack job of a Marvel film, which is what they did? This isn't even a Marvel film in terms of quality. It's like a shitty Marvel film. And so they have this little horse sled charge on the Star Destroyer that ends up working while Rey and Kylo Ren are making their way to the Emperor. The Emperor tells Rey, "Kill me and you will become Emperor Palpatine. All of the Sith will live in you." And it's stupid. So Rey walks up with her lightsaber, brings it behind her back like she's going to strike down the Emperor, but then she moves her hand and no lightsaber's there. Why? Because she's actually teleported the lightsaber across time and space to Kylo, who's somewhere else on Exegol fighting the Knights of Ren and their little magic sticks. So he then gets his lightsaber and he whoops their ass, cuts them all up, kills them, and then he goes to confront the Emperor. And once he's confronting the Emperor, Rey and Kylo are there. They each have Luke and Leia's lightsaber. Luke gave Leia's lightsaber to Rey when she came to visit him on Hermit Island. And then the Emperor is like, and he starts draining the life out of him, and you're like, oh, okay. And it revives him. His eyes turn back to his normal yellow color. He kind of gets a little bit stronger looking and has like a nice little change with the color of his little shirt or cardigan, so to speak. And you're like, oh, okay. All right. So both of them are laid on the ground, and then he reaches out his hands and shoots force lightning at all of the starships, somehow striking only the rebel ships that then start to fall off. And then he grabs Kylo and he says, "As I fell, you, the last Skywalker, will fall too." Ah! And he shoots him down a hole. And then at that point, Rey is revitalized because she can hear the voices of all the Jedi that have died before. Qui-Gon, Ahsoka Tano, Mace Windu, Leia, Luke Skywalker. So she stands up. She pulls Leia's lightsaber to her, or one of the lightsabers to her. She blocks his lightning as he starts shooting it at her. And then it's not really happening. Nothing's happening. It's kind of just staying there. And then she pulls the other lightsaber and crosses them in an X pattern, X for women here. And it just, boom, reverberates the lightning back at the Emperor, who then starts to melt. And actually blows up, hopefully for the final time, unlike in Return of the Jedi, when he somehow blew up and then came back and reconfigured himself into from a bunch of pieces into one whole, like Sagan Old Man. I don't know, whatever. This shit's crazy. Like, it doesn't even make fucking sense telling you this. But he then blows up, and at that point, the rebels are able to take out all the Star Destroyers because, they're not being force lightened, so they can fly back around, and they blow up all of the Star Destroyers by strategically striking the Death Star tech that's on the Star Destroyers that may or may not look like a penis. It kind of does. And then they fall, and due to this strain of the battle of reflecting, the force lightning with the two lightsabers, Rey dies. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, that wore out. Like, oh boy, like, drained her powers. And then she stood up and just held up her lightsabers. So she didn't even actually do like Yoda did in Attack of the Clones or Return of the Jedi, or Attack of the Clones, or the Revenge of the Sith, where he actually takes the Force lightning and deflects it back. So I could kind of see a drain doing that. No, she just used the lightsabers, and somehow this made her OD on the Force and die. So she falls over, but never fear, it's not over yet. Why? Because Kylo Ren has crawled out of the hole. He crawls his way over to Rey. He sees her dead. He reaches his hand out, puts his hand on her, and gives his life force to her. She opens her eyes, looks at him. He gives her a kiss, and then he dies, fading into the Force. Like, seriously, you can't make this shit up. It's fucking bad. There's no other way to cut it. It makes no goddamn sense. And what sense it does make, I don't know. You would have to basically be ignorant to think this is good. So at that point, she's revived. The rebels go and meet. They do a little celebration, kind of matching Return of the Jedi, where there's a celebration on all the different planets. You even see some fuzzy Ewoks, which I would have preferred more in this film than some of the shit you get in it. But so they're all celebrating, and then the Millennium Falcon goes and lands on Tatooine. And Rey shows up outside the old Lars homestead. She walks over, she takes and sets down Luke and Leia's lightsaber. And it's not even Luke's lightsaber, it's Anakin's lightsaber. And she folds him up in a bit of cloth, and then uses the Force to bury him in the sand. And then some old woman who may be a scavenger picking through some stuff says, "Who are you? Ain't nobody been here in a while." And Rey looks at her. "I'm Rey." She's like, "Rey who?" "Rise Skywalker." She says this after looking out and seeing a Force ghost, Luke and Leia, looking onto her. And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then you see the two setting suns, or the dual setting suns of Tatooine in the distance, and the film closes. And with that, closes the Disney Star Wars trilogy, or the Skywalker saga, as they like to call it. But this isn't the Skywalker saga, man. This is some basically amateur hour shit that was just made up. You know, J.J. Abrams he is what he is. He gives you what he gives you. And most of the time it's not very good. A lot of lens flares, a lot of really fast, choppy editing, and a lot of kind of contrived and cyclical storytelling that doesn't really make sense. I mean, you could tell that the Emperor was just a Hail Mary thrown in this after Snoke was killed in The Last Jedi. And the movie's bad. It's not good. None of the characters have any time to breathe. You don't really learn anything about them. You have both Finn and Poe seem to have new love interests in this, with Finn being Lando's daughter and Poe being the Zori Bliss, or Kerry Russell's character, when they even kind of set up a little bit of a love interest between Rose Tico and Finn in the past one. And also Finn, throughout this movie, he keeps saying he's got to tell Rey something, and he never tells Rey anything. And it's just bad. I mean, it's one of those ones where whatever doubts or problems you had with the prequel trilogy, that shit just evaporated after watching this. I mean, it's painful. It's a bad Marvel movie knockoff. And in that, because you can tell they actually ripped off Endgame, the moment where Thanos is like, "I am inevitable." No. And then Tony Stark's like, "I am Iron Man." In this film, you have Darth Sidious say, "I am all the Sith." Shh. And she says, "I am all the Jedi." X. And it's ignorant. Let's just put it what it is. George Lucas made a mistake selling this film, especially if he wanted a coherent story being told, which nothing has happened. And I mean, it sucks. Like I cannot recommend this film because it's bad. Like, it's very, very bad. It's a bad video game montage almost the entire time. Again, none of the characters have any development done to them. They can't even breathe. There's almost no scenes where things slow down. Everything's almost firing on all cylinders. And your attention is constantly being moved to an explosion, a race, a ship, a race, explosion, boom, a shitty lightsaber battle, another shitty lightsaber battle. Oh no, that lightsaber battle didn't even happen in real time. That actually happened in somebody's mind. And it's just a steaming pile of dog shit. I cannot recommend this film. And if you actually liked Star Wars, watch the original trilogy, watch the prequel trilogy. If you didn't like the prequel trilogy, watch this trilogy, and I guarantee you will. Thank you.